Alright guys, Scrappy here, and I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far, with Atlanta FaZe finding themselves in a potentially precarious position going into the Esports World Cup. If things don't go so well, even if things do, they may have to consider changes. Formal gives his perspective on the Drazah situation at FaZe, whether they could decide again to change around one of their AR players and keep the trio as it has been for the last couple of seasons. Would this be a good decision this time, and if they were to do so, which players could they even go and get? Scrappy would be the obvious name, but is that even attainable as it stands? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, I thought this is kind of interesting actually, a 25-page or white page document that basically describes how over the last couple of weeks they progressively turned down SBMM and saw what's happened as a result. Because the feeling is in the competitive Call of Duty scene, because most of us are like better than average players, that SBMM is painful to play with because you get matched up with players that are as good as you, and it's just not as fun in general. And I think that in terms of like the progression of a game, SBMM has been frustrating because, you know, when you first started playing, you guys will probably have similar experiences. You were just terrible at the game, and there was some guy frying you, and you're like, okay, gotta get better, gotta, you know, improve my abilities, and then eventually you're the guy frying everyone in the lobby. That doesn't happen with SBMM, and you know, the general feeling is that that's kind of a bad thing. But they actually, the analysis basically is that people prefer, on average, having SBMM in the game. I think this is, you know, you'll probably see this to be true. What is like the average Call of Duty player base, getting home from work and just hopping on for a couple of games with the guys. They don't necessarily want to get fried. They just want to be able to hold their own to some degree. And yeah, I think maybe the team-based matchmaking has caused a bit of drama. Just thought it was interesting though to see some actual analysis be done. I wonder what would happen if like this was true from the start of a game rather than happening, you know, several months into the game's life cycle. This I thought was interesting as well. What do you guys think about this? Because, well, we saw this, I miss her, and here it is, Bakaj. Now, is Ton right about the whole Bakaj situation? Like clockwork, this community, this map was fun as hell to play, says Donny 10th. So this map, Bakaj, I don't think it was really hated at the time. I mean, it wasn't the best map ever, right? But in this game, it was considered to be okay. I think just generally we are getting that CoD Cycle thing right now with Vanguard in general. I think we've even had it now for the last 6 or so months. Not even Bakaj specifically, but just the fact that, oh, well, you know, the MP40 was kind of nice, the Auto was kind of nice, like a Tuscan was a good map, for example. The game played well in XYZ aspects. I didn't like this game, but you know, I do see why in hindsight there is more optimism around what it could have been, what it was, than there was at the time. But still, I think there is a bit of a Call of Duty cycle effect going on here. Let's talk about the FaZe stuff though, right? Because, you know, here's Simp having a good time. I don't really know what's going through his head right now, but of course, you've got to wonder what they are thinking about after their top 6 results. None of them have really said all that much on the matter, right? I did think the body language was interesting after their defeats. They kind of walked off the stages all one by one. They seemed kind of separate at that point. aBeZy then commented and said, you know, GG's, poor weekend from us, but he hasn't really said anything since, right? It's been a week now, and aBeZy, nothing out of him, not too much out of Simp, so I'm sure there's some sort of conversations being had. Simp and aBeZy, at the end of the day, they have the keys. Really, Simp has the keys, I would say, in some respects, but it's probably Simp and aBeZy, realistically. They're the Tiny Terrors, they're the SMG duo, and they even have the keys over like the coaching stuff, you would imagine, right? And that has been one of the questions as to whether the coaching arrangement at FaZe is actually conducive to being, you know, as successful as they possibly could be, because Crowder isn't there with the team all the time. He works remotely. He doesn't work like every single scrim set, I don't believe. RJ is there like most of the time. Of course, they've got Tupac, who's their search and destroy guy, and, you know, there's just a few things that have caused problems in the team, and maybe there's an argument to say for FaZe that maybe a coaching change is what you look at first. Not saying that those guys are bad coaches, but just as we saw with OpTic, sometimes you just need a bit of a change of environment, right? Like you could either get that by changing out a player, or you can get that like OpTic did, bring in an OpTic Lamar to you know, to help the team do as well as they possibly can. And I think with FaZe, they've got to consider something, you would imagine, otherwise they could find themselves in a trickier spot as time goes forward, or they just blow it up. And that, of course, is another possibility as well. And Formal was kind of giving some thoughts on this. This was, of course, during the championship weekend, where they were discussing what happens with FaZe after they bowed out of the tournament. What do they do now, right? Because the last few years, they had Arcetes as their main AR. They got rid of him. They brought in Slasher. They got rid of Slasher. They brought in Drazah to be effectively the flex, and Cell was going to be the main. But even then, did that really work that well? I mean, look, they fried online in large part, and they won an event this year. But, you know, this is what FaZe do. They make a change in that fourth role. world. They win a major, and outside of that, they're pretty damn underwhelming, although still #1 seeds, still the most points in CDL history or whatever, but still it didn't really convert, did it, when the going got tough and when the pressure was on, as they were talking about in their intro. Obviously, it didn't really deliver. So I think with FaZe, you've got to recognize the possibility now that a serious, a more serious change may well be required, that it's not just about changing out the 4th AR position, because if you do that, like, who do you realistically get? I guess you're talking about Scrappy, but like, is that going to happen? Look, if FaZe came along and said, hey, Scrap, do you want to play for us? He's obviously got to have to think about it and consider it. Will he do it? That's a question. It would be difficult to say no to, especially if FaZe had the buyout money to make that happen, especially if he's not going to play with Drazah. And probably part of Scrappy would say, wow, they're going to drop Drazah for me. That's like, that's a big dub in that rivalry between the pair of them. So Scrappy would definitely have to consider it, but should FaZe go down this route? Because changing out another AR, a very talented and incredibly impressive, I thought, AR this year in Drazah, for another incredibly talented and impressive AR this year in Scrappy, is that going to make the difference if the trio stays the same, if the same problems, in terms of communication or whatever you want to say, are still a factor? Then it could still be problematic.
I don't know who they dropped for who.
Drazah, it would have to be.
But who do you get?
I don't know.
Unless you get scrapped. Unless you get scrapped, there's no argument to it.
That'd be poetic.
There's no reason.
That'd be crazy.
That'd be poetic. That'd be so, oh my god.
I think it would. I don't even know.
That would suck so bad for Drazah. You were replaced by him.
Even go. Go to
That would
Ultra.
suck.
That ends the beef right there.
So the likelihood is they're going to wait to the World Cup, they're going to see what happens there, and then they're going to probably make some of the big decisions in terms of what exactly they want to do next. But, if they win the World Cup, how much does it change the situation if they bomb out top 4, top 6 again at the World Cup? My feeling is that the chemistry in that FaZe camp is quite possibly kind of cooked, so I don't know if it's going to be easy at all for them to get back to where they want to be. This also was very interesting, I thought, going around yesterday, that I thought I'd share for you guys. So Hitch puts this together, started writing down old heads in CoD to see if there was a potential for a retirement league in the offseason, and wow, man, we've been doing this for a minute. So these are the names of the players that have retired and have been notable over the last few years that potentially could be considered for like a retirement league in effect. Now, the funny thing about this is there's some of these guys that aren't actually retired, right? Or they've been around for a bit of time. So this is the list that he comes up with, trying to come up with maybe 10 teams. And look, they wouldn't be able to do this all the time, but it would be a great piece of content, right, to see some of these old guys coming together in these rosters and maybe matching up against some current teams or whatever, because lots of these guys have still got it, right? The likes of Karma, for example, who's, I'm sure he's on here somewhere. Okay, just at the top of the second row here at the top of the screen, but, he's still got it, right? Absolutely. There was even talk during the World Championship that basically Karma was absolutely frying these guys in the warm-ups. Like, Dashy was hopping on to try and warm up for the grand finals, and Karma put on the championship weight, and there he was on the Sunday, being classic Karma on the championship Sunday, just putting in work and slamming his own team. Like, Karma he is definitely, I still think, good enough to compete if he had the commitment to actually be a player. I think he could do it, but that's not how it's going to be. But these are the players involved, and of course now he's a 4-time world champion, 3 as a player, 1 as a coach. Incredible scenes. Scump, Nadeshot, Embos, Methods, Attach, Zuma, Octane, Havoc, Clay, pretty funny, we'll get to that. Enable, Cap, Study. So, some of these guys still involved, either as content creators. Now, we'll talk Attach as well, okay, Attach and Clay, because those guys definitely aren't necessarily in the retirement league. But, yeah, Study, Nameless, Merc, Burns or TP, pretty interesting. Brian Saint, Karma, Crim, Apathy, what a player he was back in the day. Slacked, of course, Doug now counts after having retired. And then they've got some of the, starting to get real OG here. Pac-Man, Ricky, of course, Looney, Rambo as well, Patty P, Proofy, Muddog. So all these guys having played at some point, could be some great teams you could form here. Of course, Blake and George as well from the TST side. John, of course, Tommy, European player. And then I've got some other guys on the list. Formal, Parasite, Lacefield, of course, notable player. Slasher, we'll get to him in a second. Rated Joe, Frosty would be very interesting. Spacely, Sender. So we got some coaches. We got the likes of Saint, Twiz Chino next, of course, like Fellow as well. So few players here that are still actually players. I thought it was pretty funny that he noted some of these guys down, because there was lots of reaction to it saying, well, hang on a second, what are you talking about, right? Because basically he's saying, oh, these are all the old heads and this is potential for the retirement league. So it's not exactly like, oh, these are the retired washed up players, but it's like these are the retired players and then there's a couple of other players in here that are like the old heads, right, that have been around a long time. And I think this is kind of cool, right, because if you're going to run a retirement league, you're probably wanting to run it on one of these OG games. So you probably want someone that's been around on one of these OG games, right? And this is the likes of, well, Attach and Clayster, and also Slasher, for example. They've been around. Okay, Clay's been around since 2009 at least. Attach has been around since 2013, so pretty much as Slasher. So, and maybe Fellow as well, to some degree, although he came in a little bit later than, let's say, Advanced Warfare time. So pretty much the players that he's got on here as old heads that are still playing, they've been around for at least a decade, really. So I guess that's kind of the point here, right? That's why he's included some of these guys. But Slasher's like, damn, what are you talking about? And, you know, as Hitch says, I just wrote down the oldest guys that I could think of, and, you know, pretty funny back and forth, to be fair. And as Fellow says, no way Hitch just putting me in retirement, what did I miss? And, you know, actually Fellow says the following: I actually feel way better at 26, 27 than I have in any previous year. And Trey's in the reply saying, damn, what's going on? Why am I in there? Of course, Zero, as he was known in his playing days. And, yeah, maybe the return for Trey's on the cards going soon, because he hit on that retirement list. And even Clay is like, damn, I'm on here. Like, look, we know that Clay, he knows he's an old guy in the league. And it's pretty funny how quite often you see Clay talk about the fact that on the desk, they're constantly saying, oh, old man Clay's back at it again. It's like, yeah, I know. I'm 32, still fine, right? You know, that's the plan. And Clay, his ideal world is he'll come back, right? But not super clear whether that's going to happen. And as Jacob says, brutal for Attach and Clayster socks. You don't have to be retired to play, just old, really old. They can still play. So as long as you're old, you get to play. I think that's the rule here. So even if they're back in the league, I think of these three players, I'm expecting, well, I don't know about Clay, to be honest. I don't know if Clay gets another spot. I would like it to happen, but I don't know if it is going to happen for sure. I think it's definitely a possibility for next season, but I wouldn't say it's a guarantee that Clay gets back in the league. I think that Attach absolutely should. I think Vegas will... They should keep him around, I would say, unless he gets a better offer elsewhere that he could potentially go for. Slasher, I think, should for sure be back in the league. I think after his stint on Boston, which was clearly not his fault after what happened after that, after the fact that FaZe, they got rid of him last season, and have they got better this year on average? No, in terms of the actual results they put up on the table. So I think this is why Slasher will be looked at and should definitely get back in the league somewhere. I think the players will still rate him very highly. Clay, I think that should also apply to, but there's just only so many AR spots you can actually have in the league. So very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Just one final thing here for you guys, thought was kind of interesting. Active 1+ KD tournament streak. So Attach is at 5 in a row. Simp, Ghosty, Scrap, they're at 5 or 6. But the record right now is, well, absolutely no doubt about it. Cellium leads the way with 23 tournaments in a row with a 1+ or with a 1.00 or better KD. But HyDra is got to be the most impressive on here, really, just because to do this on the SMG is super unprecedented, and well, he's doing it 21 in a row. The record, if you guys are unfamiliar, is Scump with about 47, so a long way to go, but you know, they can potentially get there. But very much interested in your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.